with big holes in it. Like, who's going to help those people? Who's going to provide them with food? And a lot of elderly folks who can't afford their deductibles to get their homes repaired, even if they have insurance. So who's helping those people? So we need to make sure we have all advocates, all legislatures, all people from our community really working towards finding these solutions for what's happening in our community. But then also, you know, as people, you know, people of the north side, you know, if the grass is always greener, we think it's always greener over there on the other side. But, you know, we have green grass here in our neighborhoods too. And it's time for us to start buying back our blocks and taking back our communities and reinvesting in our communities. So I think the solution, or part of the solution is, yes, our legislators, yes, you know, dealing with slumlords, but also we have to take action as well as the community to start making the change that needs to happen.
And Mr. Moderator, if I can just add to that, if you want.
What if I said no?
I just wanted to piggyback on what Ms. Bingham said. You know, I wholeheartedly agree with you. And just to add, you know, since we're talking again about solutions, last time I talked about how we need to be intentional. And I'm talking, you know, let's just start from the individual level in regards to housing in our community. First off, we need to move back to our communities. We need to move back into inner city Lafayette. We need to be intentional about doing that because we need to bring the value, we need to bring our skill set, we need to bring our love for our community back to our inner city. And being intentional in doing that on an individual level will first make all the difference. I say that because that's exactly what I did. I moved my family into Fightingville, into the block area, because that's where my family's from. But I've never lived there. I literally, quite frankly, moved from over 3,500 square feet to about 1,400 intentionally for my family. And it was the best thing I ever did. Get to know the community, connecting with the neighborhood, understanding and being part of the fabric of something. It helps you really see exactly what you can expand. So, you know, adding to, yes, let's be intentional. Yes, let's support these organizations, but let's take the steps as individuals and let's move back to our community.
Dr. Stewart, I want to come to you as a professor of business. What benefit is there to the current model that we have for the city? And how do we juxtapose that with something that might work better? So our current situation versus what would be ideal?
So I'm going to build off of Ms. Bingham and Mr. Martinez that in order to come back and build from within, we need to have financing mechanisms that are accessible and available to people who are here within our communities. Last week we talked about Liberty Bank out of New Orleans, and some of the work I had was to follow up with them. And I talked to Ravis Martinez, who is their vice president of business development, and I talked to him about the opportunity of potentially opening up a branch here. So he talked to just about
Switch mics.
So Liberty Bank talked about just the challenge in the financial industry about opening new branches, and that the model right now for banks is not to open new branches because there's so much business going towards a digital platform in and of itself. Now, with that, he said that they would be very open to coming to Lafayette to have a discussion, about how it's going to be helped with the initiatives that are happening on the north side of town to see how we can make financing more accessible. So that's part of it. And the other part in terms of moving back, I just recently moved back to the north side of town, and one of the things I can tell you is that I think there's a tremendous opportunity for someone on the north side of Lafayette to start up a real estate appraisal company, because the difference in appraisal from the north side of Lafayette to other parts of the region are dramatic.
Wow.
but it's $40 more expensive per square foot. That just doesn't make any sense, right? But when we start doing, real estate appraisals, I don't know, that's not my industry, but I think from a business standpoint, there's a lot of variables that go into housing developments and real estate. And one of the things I think is the way that we appraise property and understanding the neighborhoods, understanding the amenities in those neighborhoods, because every part of our city is different. And the things that are valuable in one community might not necessarily be valuable in another community. We need somebody who understands what's valuable in that area to be able to really put a price tag on it. But then also to be able to work with realtors to where they can see the value that we have in properties here.
Thank you for that answer. I'll go next to Councilman Rubin. Now a two-part question. Do the ordinances in city governance ensure that we don't have this disproportionate level of difference in housing? And do we have ordinance or rules in this parish for what has been described as slumlords or absentee landlords in such a fashion that protects the renter? In your opinion as a councilman?
Sometimes. That's good.
Okay. There is something that's been put into place to protect against slumlords. But it's not broad yet. It's like if you get properties from LCG, like if you get adjudicated properties, like there's different organizations who can come and acquire the properties. We protect against people that comes and buy them in bulk. And there's something in place right now that where they'll go and they'll check on the property over a period of time. They're supposed to, let's put it like that. And actually this has been in place, but no one has ever really gone and checked on them. But as it was like last year, we put it into writing that we're going to start doing that. And we just need to check on it to make sure that this is happening across the board, because let's suppose you become one of those slumlords and you want to start purchasing 20 houses, and then you're just throwing them up any kind of way in the neighborhood and nobody checking on you. Or shit, next week I'm going to get 20 more. And I'll just throw it up and just keep making be a slumlord across the board. So that's something that yes, there is something that is in place for that. Okay, what was the next other question? Okay, I'm good. All right.
Miss Bingham Shelton Bingham. I got it right that time. Miss Shelton Bingham, before I get kicked out.
Appreciate you.
Same question, and from the perspective of a person that has worked in housing. Have our rules, ordinances, and outreach kept up with the nature of slumlord behavior that we see in the city? Is enforcement robust enough?
Absolutely not. But Councilman was correct that they are trying to make efforts to start correct some of those things. But it's more than just the adjudicated ordinance and putting some words to make sure people can't take bulk properties, because that's already happening. Adjudication is still happening. People are doing cash transactions daily, with houses. People are for sale. I'll buy your lot for $2,000-$3,000. Crazy. And people are being cold-called constantly in our community about getting housing. So one of the things, especially within Louisiana's laws are mostly for the property owner. It's not really for the renter. And most of the education about what's going on with the renters isn't really communicated out what their rights are and how they get access to things. So what's happened, especially during COVID, is you have all these absentee landlords, these people that have minutia ownership in homes, showing up and knocking on people's doors in the morning and trying to kick them out. What are they going to do? They don't know these people. These sometimes often white people are showing up on their doors, banging on their doors, and demanding them to go. So, but they don't know their rights. They don't know how to do anything. I get people showing up at the community house constantly
say to the viewers, right, we have Bishop John Milton, who thankfully is also an attorney, so we can get some free legal advice from him. I'll try to get you money's worth today. Bishop Milton, if you first introduce yourself, and then I'll ask my question.
Okay, so John Milton, I'm a practicing lawyer here in Lafayette for over 30 years, and I'm also a pastor, and I pastor this church in Miami.
Thank you so much. And the fourth alpha at the table. I just kind of want to say the fourth alpha, so we got ourselves in trouble here in a second. Bishop Milton, Ms. Shelton Bingham. I got it right. Ms. Shelton Bingham discussed this absentee landlord behavior. What rights do these renters have, particularly when people are showing up that they don't know, demanding rent from them or telling them that they need to get out? What's the way that they protect themselves, and what community resources exist that you know about?
Well, first of all, Louisiana's laws are strongly in favor of landlords versus the leasing, and whereas in many other states or jurisdictions, preventing homelessness is more important than a financial transaction. So people rent their homes. People who are slumlords, it's a business, and it's about money, it's about property. And so, to be frank with you, if you don't pay your rent, unless you have something like a COVID-19 freeze on evictions, if you're unable to make your rent, then, and unless you need some exception where you basically improvements on the facility, there are a few little things that legally, an attorney can look in to see whether or not you have some basis for preventing yourself from being evicted in the event of non-payment of rent. But the bottom line in Louisiana, property rights are taken at face value, and if I own the property and you breach your contract or lease with me, or, for example, if you don't have a lease and you're renting month to month, the law only requires a landlord to give you 10 days notice prior to the end of that month. And if I give you the 10-day notice, it is my right to have my property if I own it.
Right.
That's what's so unfortunate. So there are fortunately a lot of people who have shown mercy in these difficult days, but the big scare is that upon gentrification, which is obviously imminent, what the normal practice is because we talked last week about the fact that in Macomb Beasley, I think it was 50% of the people in Macomb Beasley are homeowners who reside there. The other 50% are residing or renting other people's houses. So when gentrification comes about, the practice is normally the landlord will jack the rent up. Those who can't afford it must go. And then you transform some raggedy house that hasn't been maintained, no investment in it, and you create little cottages, put some flowers around, and the poor people gotta go. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. And just for people that are watching, you're not obligated, correct me if I'm wrong, counsel, but you're not obligated to a self-help eviction in Louisiana. Somebody knocks on your door and says, get out, they don't have a court order, you're not obligated to follow that.
No, there is a process that is required. There is a formality to imminent eviction for non-rent. They must give you a 5-day notice, and if you fail to move out voluntarily, then they are required, the landlord or person representing a landlord has an obligation to take you to court and file an actual lawsuit called an eviction suit against you to have you ordered by the court to get out. But you're not ordered to you don't have to leave until the judge orders you, but you must know that when a judge finds that an eviction is proper, then you only have 24 hours to get out. Under penalty of the marshal coming in and taking all your possessions out, cutting your lock, whatever it takes to remove you, taking all your possessions and put it to the street. So that's the unfortunate thing.
Thank you so much. I see you reaching for the microphone. Go ahead.
talking a little earlier about us owning properties and things of such, and we're talking about solutions today. I think education, and like what we're doing right now is a great thing, educating people. I spoke to Dr. Williams a while back. There was a situation, and he can probably help me with this here where I'm going. He probably know where I'm at. What's going on is, in our community, our people aren't being educated. So you have a young man, and I'm going to give you a prime example. A young man that's not educated on paying insurance, paying taxes, and things like so, right? You have people coming in our community, taking our homes just for taxes. And then they're throwing you out. Okay? I know a young man, his mom is in the hospital, he never took care of no business. They threw him out of his house this year. Well, that was last year, the end of last year. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, he gave him 24 hours. The judge gave him 24 hours. The guy was nice enough to give him 30 days. The new owner of the house gave him 30 days. Now he's in a house that's paid for. His mom and dad worked for him all these years. House paid for him. But he lost it because of taxes.
Delinquent tax.
And then they came to him and told him, okay, if you give us X amount of $1,000, I'll give you back your house. Now, it sounds unfair, but that's what's happening within our community. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm saying that to say this, if we educate some of these people and let them know there are people like Dr. Williams' program, am I saying that correct, Doc? They have a program where they'll come there and say, hey, well, look, and it sounds like you're being ugly, but if Dr. Williams' program can come there and say, hey, look, we're going to pay that out for you, you just pay us back. Now, if you don't pay us back, well, then we're going to want to have the house, okay? And it's not like they're making big money on it. They're just making sure that the house stays within the community. And if you want, you can elaborate on that for a little more. But the house stays within our community instead of this one guy. Matter of fact, when I did the research on him and called back, they just say, oh, he's been doing this. He knows what he's doing. And he won't go after, let's say, somebody that has money. He targets people that he knows, if I pay that tax for 3 years, he or she can't afford to pay me back, so now I got the house. And it's a simple task. You know, so we need to be educating our people, let them know there are people like Dr. Williams that will help them out to keep that house within the community. Educate our people that they have to pay the taxes on their homes because someone's going to take your house. I see it. The guy was staying there, now he's staying in Village Black now. When he was staying in a free house. So, I just thought I'd share that very quick. As far as an educational piece. Dr. Williams, would you like to elaborate on that?
Thank you so much. I'm gonna be very brief because I think you set it up very nicely. So what we're trying to do at Sancho is address this, and the way that you address it is through money, right? So we know that we have people, I know just with attorneys dealing with this situation, elected officials dealing with this situation, community-based organizations dealing with this situation. So I guess my short answer to that is that we're trying to come up with a pool of money that, and Brother Taylor, you got an array of answers from us today, this afternoon. And that's the status of where it is in Louisiana. You know, we're going to have a couple of bills come up this year in the legislative session to try to address it. We need people like Councilman Rubin to address it on the local level, but it's all over the board. And what I mean by that very quickly is that the Louisiana Housing Corporation is trying to address it in Baton Rouge. You have the Lafayette Sheriff who collects taxes, and all of the sheriff departments around the 64 sheriffs around the state have different people that do exactly what the councilman is talking about. One of the biggest investors in properties in Louisiana, I say investors, who buy up these tax deals is from the state of Nebraska. who is engaging in our city, okay? And then you have the local people who are engaging in what is considered to be a legal process. So what we're trying to do at Sun Turtle, and what we are doing, is having access to capital to tell people who've been in our community for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, you know, we're gonna provide this bridge loan to you to get you out of the arrears and get you current and get your taxes taken care of and put you on a payment plan to pay the nonprofit back as a way of, like you said, helping citizens. And it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of work. And just so I'm not too long, if anybody I'm going to just say this. Don't sell your property. If you're in distress, don't be embarrassed about talking to people before it's too late.
Yes.
And so if you're in a situation with taxes, if you're in a situation behind on your mortgage, you need to call us now while we're still in the moratorium at 337-501-7617. Thank you.
Dr. Williams, thank you for that. And this practice is something that we've talked about across a couple of months now in trying to pass some legislative priorities that protect us. And I would go to Ravis Martinez to ask, one, what's the solution to engaging our legislators in Baton Rouge for a legislative fix? And what does that lobbying and conversation sound like in order to protect people who are disproportionately Black and minority that are impacted by these practices?
That's a great question. I think we want to look at it first from an individual level again. And let me just take this off. And for us to have that perspective and that conversation with those elected officials, we really first need to be honest. I think Tina said it best last week that our elected officials are not our leaders. Our leaders are the folks around this table that are working every single day to move the community further, and not just from a political calculation or perspective. As you know, here in Louisiana, a highly conservative state, we as African Americans have very limited resources in the state legislature. And when we look at our local setup and our local officials, we see numerous times where they're outnumbered, they're outmanned, and they're outgunned. We lose more than we win. I saw something early in this new administration that really shocked me, that really kind of moved. It just kind of moved and nobody really said much about it, but it really spoke to this issue, at least for me. And indulge me a second here. We had an opportunity to select a person to a board or a commission for the city of Lafayette. It was an African American position specifically, and you had two African American city councilmen who selected a certain individual who said, hey, this person represents the interest of our community.
Yes.
This is who we feel is the best person to represent our interests on this board. Being we're outnumbered, outgunned, they lost.
Yes.
They put somebody else who they felt
Yes.
was a better representation of leadership than the two African American city councilmen. So when you talk about answering that question, it's larger than the time that we have, but that's just where we are in Lafayette to begin with. So that tells you a lot of things. From an individual level, the responsibility of the elected officials, they need to be knowledgeable. They need to understand the rules. They need to understand the game that's being played. and they need to use the resources that they have around them to move forward the agenda for the community. Most of the times, we don't get that. And that's on that individual level. It has nothing to do with anybody else. So, again, let's start with the individual. Let's assess the values of the folks we elect into public office. And let's engage them in a way that, one, they can be transparent, and two, we can move our agendas forward. Because it's not working.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez, for that glowing example of how a person was appointed to the leader board. Just so that I'm saying it for the record. See, as the moderator, I have special powers to say what I want. They gave me that today. And so the leader board is exactly what he's talking about. And I have to agree that we've got to begin to look at how the landscape looks. And I would add to what you're saying, and I would come to you, Mr. Rubin, to prep you. But we also must look at people that consistently vote against the interests of the people in their community too. Because I'm not giving any free passes anymore. And just so that I'm saying that from the perspective of someone that has been beating the street for the deaths of black men, the missing children that go undocumented in our community, people are frequently silent. And so I just kind of want to add that piece. Mr. Rubin, do we have a legislative problem in our city where our people of color are disproportionately ignored in a fashion or way that does not make for the best policy for the north side of Lafayette economically and as it relates to housing? Absolutely. That's one of those moderated powers.
Yeah, like you said, absolutely right there. In a nutshell, yeah. You know what I'm saying? The deck is stacked against us. I mean, I can elaborate to some other things, but in a simple 2 minute, less than 2 minute, yeah. You know what I'm saying? We don't have the numbers that we need to get the things that we need. When I say numbers, like Mr. Martinez was saying, okay, on the city side, we have 2 African Americans or Democrats or whatever you want to look at them as, and 3 Republicans or Caucasian or whatever you want to call it. Put a name twist on it. So therefore, the deck is stacked against them. On the parish side, on the city of 1 to 5. So, what's your question again?
You answered it very nicely.
Thank you very much, sir.
I appreciate that, and I have not had a much more high respect, and I respect you quite a bit than that answer I just got. That was brief. I'm gonna come next to Miss Sheldon Bingham. Yes, I'm 3 for 3. And ask the same or similar question to you. And what do you think the solution is to shifting the narrative? There's some issue that exists where we talk beyond each other in this city. We're unable to have communication with one another across white or black, rich or poor, Democrat or Republican, in some cases, 1 or 2 Democrats, some Democrat Republicans, and then some Republicans, but we'll get to that later. What do you think is the solution to ensuring that our elected officials have the backup they need from the community to help to advocate for the policies on housing, to advocate for the policies on economic development? What do you think is a good fix to that?
Well, I'm going to reinvent a wheel, or at least I'm going to transport a wheel, because I think the solution really is education, right? People in our community are being educated much more than they have been. With just the fill up that meeting and make sure that they hear what the community needs. We need to have people that are there, and our officials and our elected folks need to be willing to let that conversation happen and be open to making sure that they're asking the right questions of their colleagues to make sure that we're moving those things forward and challenging them to make sure that they're doing the best things for our community. And until we have that conversation and we come together, I think the solution is just going to be out of reach a little bit because we're still not all working together.
Thank you for that context, and I'm going to go next to Bishop Milton, and I agree a lot with what Michelle and Bingham has said. And even in the civil rights movement, right, politicians didn't lead. It wasn't attorneys up front, it was civil rights activists. So one, have we gotten to a place where we are unable to have authentic dialogue with one another because we're so polarized? And then two, if your answer is yes, what's the solution to finding commonality? Because I find us on two ends of continuum from my perspective. How do we find the middle of the road line?
So if I can address the issue by speaking to a natural fact, which was a solution. When Dr. Williams was on the council along with Mr. Lewis, Mr. Lewis stood up, and that was about 16 years ago, and one day he said, I get no respect. Now the two of them were two African American council members on the council of 9. And they got no respect. Every single vote was 7-2, 7-2. Most people in Lafayette been around know about that. So Mr. Lewis began to look at his district and see who else does he represent other than poor black people or African American population. And he realized that he had Mr. Ed Cranley's McDonald's in his district. He had Herb Schilling's new facility that was just built. And so what happened was the African American people who were promoting Rebuild Lafayette North, and most people thought it was just a black thing, but how can it be when most businesses in Lafayette North belong to white people? So the idea was to form a coalition. And just like South Lafayette relied upon a collaboration between Youngsville and Broussard that made South Lafayette what it was economically. The effort became, how do we make North Lafayette the city? See, North Lafayette always referred to the city limits, the northern portion. So how do we collaborate with Carenville and Deuce and Scott? And utilize the structure, the infrastructure of two interstate highway intersections, the intersection here, the railroad station coming through North Lafayette. How do we, and we began talking about that, and it led to, believe it or not, the development of Upper Lafayette Economic Development Foundation. Unfortunately, there were some transactions and intentions there. We made almost every black person said, I'm out. And there was the end of the collaboration.
Right.
But the concept as a solution was right. That we must collaborate because if our council members in two districts that are African American or one district for the parish area that's African American, if they can't collaborate and get the whole district to shout with the African American community, then we are powerless. You see, unless we go back to the days of boycotting and boycotting what we did?
Protest.
No. Striking, a strike. We don't work. No righteous pay, no righteous work. You know, the taxes of the past are solutions for today. But we don't have the cohesiveness, and there's so much disjunctiveness. And I just want to say that I agree that there are tons of other leaders who are not politicians. But I do say that our politicians are also leaders. So when we think conjunctively, they have the rightful place, but they have no power if the economic leaders are not behind it. They have no power if the populace is not behind it. Right. So that's the solution. Coming up with a strategic plan for a depressed area to say, how will we rise up? I'll find this.
Yes, I think you did a very good job of addressing that. Here's one of those moderator superpowers again. When we think about our elected officials, we must ensure that they are representing the issues of the areas that they represent. I see Mr. Rubin in the area. I see several other elected officials across the state doing the work. You want to add something to that, Dr. Stewart? Okay. And so what I'd say to you, Bishop Milton, excuse me, is that we also have to have some accountability conversations in our community around elected officials. Because if I can see you or find you on Instagram or Facebook at the event in DC for Mardi Gras, and you're at the governor's mansion, while the people in your community have not seen you in 6 months, and get no redress from you when they call your office, we got some serious issues. So I challenge the people in the community that are watching to keep in contact with the people that are doing that you find at the governor's mansion, but not at the people's house. Dr. Stewart.
So I wanted to add in terms of how do we get action, from some of these things. Margie and Tina are participating with us in Accelerate Northside, and one of the things that has come up over the first 3 weeks are things that we have in place from a policy perspective for parts of the north side of town, like opportunity zones, like economic development districts, TIF districts, these types of things. These are economic development tools, but they're also incredibly complex financial, regulations as well. On the surface, to think that, we could just roll this out and everybody just get it is a bit naive in my opinion. And what I've seen over the last 3 weeks is that there's an incredible, hunger for information on, well, what does this mean? Like, what does this mean to my community? What does this mean for, like yesterday I came up, so North University Avenue. Okay, well, that's great. But what does it mean for 2 blocks off of North University Avenue? What does that mean for the neighborhoods there? So there is a real need for conversation, but pointed conversation. Around, okay, let's get in and let's start to work through these instruments to really show how does it impact businesses on the north side of Lafayette, how does it impact homeowners on the north side of Lafayette, how does it impact an entrepreneurial dream on the north side of Lafayette. Because without education on those issues, the learning curve is extremely steep, and those who could forge that path, Terry Smith forged it with an opportunity zone. But that's just out of sheer will, right? So there's a steep learning curve on a lot of these things. Going to meetings, those kind of things, we absolutely have to continue to do. But we also need to call for some assistance on learning the basics of a lot of these things that are in our community.
Dr. Stewart, I want you to put down that microphone because I have a follow-up to that. I'll do that. So, and my follow-up is two-part, and I'll be delicate here because I think it's important. I don't want to be called into the principal's office tomorrow. Where do those resources and trainings come from? Has the university or the city put forth the resources and training to give access to the community, and they just don't know about it? Or do you think, and this isn't a dig, I think that sometimes we look past situations because they're just not common to us. Do we need to put more resources towards educating people about the sort of TIF districts and economic development zones that you're talking about? And then if you think we need more resources, who are the people to provide them?
So, Mr. Martinez, you did the pilot session a year, 1 or 2 years ago. And at that meeting, there was, one Katie and Lita, both brought up the notion of having field offices on the north side of Lafayette. And that discussion is ongoing. But historically, from an economic development standpoint, what I find is we've always been kind of an a la carte type of service. That there's services that are there, and if you can make your way and you can find them, there's people there to help you, but you've got to forge that path to get there. At UL, the center that I started, the LEAD Center, our focus is on rural, low-income, and minority communities because we didn't want to duplicate any of the effort, but two, we saw that the resources weren't reaching out beyond the people who would actually find their way to them. So our program, Accelerate Northside, that's part of what we're doing. And this is just the beginning. So we're brand new, and we're working as part of our effort. We're trying to bring in economic development partners into that process to where they can
see. And I'll mention this about the community on the north side of town. We started with 43 people, and after 3 weeks of showing up on Saturday mornings at 8:30, we still have 40 people in the seats. You know, so there is a hunger, there's a desire, there's a drive, and we have to also expose that to others, you know, to where they see that the need is there.
Hold on, Mr. Martinez wants to go, so I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Rubin. And I want to follow up first with a question, and then you can add. And thank you for that answer. I think it was a very good answer. This nice gentleman mentioned LEADA and the resources that LEADA has. How many of those are making it to the community? And just for the viewers and people in the audience, I kind of want to remind you that LEADA is the board that the parish council appointed the representative not expected or not moved by the African American councilman.
Okay, you know, to be quite honest, like Dr. Stewart stated, that these resources are available. They're in the community. You know, LEADA is a viable asset to the community and the region in bringing in corporations and major businesses here. You know, when Pod is talking about the tools and really getting the education and getting folks involved, you know, Pride Opportunity Developers, we started about 2 years on this education campaign to really let individuals, businesses, community organizations, and the like know about the resources that are available to them. Not just something that's exclusive to Pod as a business, but really as a community, some of these opportunities that we can latch on to. The opportunity zones, these new economic development districts that we're heavily involved with, and how these things are going to really change. The partnership that UL has with the Black Chamber of Commerce and how they're supporting new businesses. So these 40 people are new businesses that are, you know, looking at, hey, how do I start a business, going through that process. I would add that in order for us as a community to really move, we need to expand that type of program to be very specific, to engage African American businesses in a couple of things, to bring awareness and engagement to the processes and the tools that are available to them, like a LEADA, to give them access to markets, to understand what's really available in the marketplace for the businesses that we have in our community, access to capital. There's a lot of different avenues and venues right now, especially with COVID-19, that has dramatically affected African American businesses that we're really not capitalizing on from a city perspective or really a state perspective, as other states and cities have, specifically designated funds for African American businesses, knowing that over 42% of those have now gone away because of COVID-19. Capacity building, like for different businesses and organizations, how do we help them scale up? How do we take that single painter or that one or two small repair shop, and how do we help them scale up as a business so they can hire more people and get a better living wage? And building a pipeline, how do we take those folks that are graduating UL and keep them here in this local marketplace? I can tell you it's very hard. I had to leave here for over 17 years before I had the financial means to come back and to be able to survive here. And lastly, you know, how are we really being inclusive in our community? And how are we as organizations, individuals, and really our city and local folks working together? You know, COVID-19, of course, we all know what it's done, but really we examine it from an access standpoint and access to resources. I know Tina sits on this health equity committee and has served with me or said in this. She's always there. So a lot of times there's a disparity, right? Right now we're talking about a vaccine, rolling it out. A couple of minority organizations are involved at this point. But but yet we need more communication, more cohesiveness, and more inclusion. So I know that was a long answer to not answer your question, but I think it's important just to know that in order for us to really, really move the needle, we need to bring all these things together, these partners.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. I appreciate you. All right. I want to change topics for a second, because Ms. Sheldon Bingham, that's the fourth time I'm right, said something that I have seen work, particularly to our neighbor up the street, which is buying back the block. They have a young man in that area that spent an extensive amount of time getting people in the community to invest in buying back the block. And when I think about the frontage road, even a few 100 feet from here, I just see empty, vacant buildings that people have abandoned. One day people had jobs, the next day they didn't. And I think the only thing we have left there is a McDonald's, if I'm not mistaken, and a hotel that leaves a lot to be desired. And so, can you talk a little bit about buying back the block for people that do not have the concept of that and what it means and looks like? And then I'm going to come to Dr. Williams with the same question for a follow-up.
So I'm very excited that you brought up Houston because I actually graduated with that gentleman from Southern University. I wanted to throw that out there because
I'm
a Southern University graduate. But basically, Buyback the Block came back. It was a project where this gentleman kind of pooled his resources with a group of people and bought a large section of property that had commercial, residential, and rental properties on it. And basically, they put out a campaign and asked to raise $1 million to continue to refurb and rehab this property to bring it into some kind of commerce. And I actually purchased a portion of this, so I can't wait to cash my check. But basically, the property ended up with having 18 residential rental units that have active residents in it. It has 3 commercial properties on it. And I hope that's the same one we'll be talking the same one, right? Yes. 3 new commercial properties, and it already had a tenant that was there that was paying a lease on it. So basically, that project, all of the dividends that's collected from that project over the years of profit will be divided amongst all the shareholders quarterly. And that's a project, and I think a plan that could work here, especially when we look at the amount of dedicated properties that we have in our community, the amount of lights that's in our community, the vacancies in our property, in our community. I think that's an opportunity for us to really get some blocks, especially like in properties like Fightville, where there's so much vacancy there, where there's so much rich history, for us really to buy back a block and intentionally invest in our community to make those things happen. And invest in those businesses, because that's one of the things that we're all kind of thinking through now, even being in Celebrate North. We're going to finish this program in 6 weeks. What's next? Some of us have been working at this for a while. Some of us are ready to scale to the next level. What's next? How do we get access to those resources? How do we educate the people that need to be educated to get the resources into our community? How do we get there?
Dr. Williams, is it duplicatable in Lafayette? And if so, what does it look like as a solution to some of the issues that we have?
So Cory Bush in Missouri was elected to Congress last fall. Cory Bush, before that, was in the streets. You may have seen in the streets with the murder in Ferguson. She is of the community, by the community, unapologetically Black, and now she's sitting in Congress. And her pledge is to represent those people and not forget where she came from. So it is doable, but we have to understand that the politics of East Baton Rouge Parish and the politics of Lafayette is very, very, very different. When you have a Southern University, a Black mayor, two North Baton Rouge Economic Development Authorities, one led by Chris Tyson, one led by another brother that just moved to Texas because he was hired away, but they're going to hire somebody else in his place. They are all, although they have their issues, there is and it kind of goes to the 7-2 issue, because we didn't have many budget issues. Louis and I was able to get over $300 million in 12 years on the north side of Lafayette, because we were pressing really, really hard. And the genre was always that we're going to press. And even if we lose, the public's going to know that we lost. So that we're not going to hide the fact that we lost. We're going to actually publicize the fact that we lost because we wanted frontage roads. But Joey Burrell said, if you want frontage roads, you have to build them yourself, right? So now the power groups come up so that we can build it ourselves. And then the administration said, well, no, we don't want you to pay for it yourself either. Only point here is that we have to recognize the fact, and this discussion is really good, but the public policy that is in this city and in this parish does not lead to what we're talking about at this table today. It doesn't. I mean, that's euphoric. I mean, it just doesn't. This council and this administration just recently redirected housing money to small businesses. This council and this administration just recently said we're going to not do this total set-aside this year, and there is an exemption federally to do that. So this council had to deal with a whole lot when this man couldn't get a second to discuss recreation. And so my point is this. It's doable here, but he has to not only, Mr. Rubin not only has to have the community support, but he has to have the white community support, the white power structure in this city to get off their butts and say that they're going to support his initiative and not say we believe in smaller government, we want to reduce the size of the government, and we're not going to raise taxes. The public policy behind what we're doing is imperative, and I'm going to close with this. So when Cori Bush goes to Congress, she's going in with a Democratic Congress, a Democratic president. We have an opportunity, we have a new legislative Black Caucus chair, we have some dynamic leadership here, we have Cedric Richmond in the White House, and we have the federal level where it is. We have to push full steam ahead to begin to move this ideology to approve these things that we're talking about. Ravis is being very discreet, but what the power group had to go through to get where they're at was tremendous, right? What the Four Corners development had to go through, and it was debated for 2 or 3 hours, Mr. Rubin, that night, because what had been done in the past wasn't going to be done in this case. And so my only point is that we can discuss it, but in order to have a paradigm shift, we have to have better relations in this community. When anyone at this table goes in the community at large, whether it's Lita, one Acadiana, the university, wherever, there has to be respect of the experts that are up here to know what is needed in this economically distressed community. And we have a good start. And so we're talking about solutions. We have a good start. What's going on Wall Street is beautiful. So we have to love each other. We have to appreciate each other. We have to support each other with all of these new initiatives and not hate each other. And that in Lafayette has been the biggest challenge, is our ability to be as aggressive as Jamal is on discussing issues, but knowing that he's not doing it from a place of hate, because he's not doing it from a place of hate, he's doing it from a place of love, because his talent, his research can be done anywhere else in the country. Those people that decide to stay here, we stay here because we love Lafayette. And the paradigm that people try to set is that if somebody's speaking out against the injustices or moving the economic and housing agenda forward, well, you're against what we're doing. No, the complete opposite. We love the fact that we're in Louisiana. We just don't love all the circumstances here, and we have the resources and information to make a change. And I think that in order for us not to be having this discussion 2 years from now, next year, there has to be some systemic change on the public policy.
Dr. Williams, I think you said a mouthful, and I didn't cut you off because I think that everything you said was poignant and on point. I think I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege. See, this one of those moderator superpowers again. And say that I think that we are afraid of having difficult And when I look at it from a historical context and think through Aretha Castle Haley and that group of people in New Orleans in the civil rights movement, and I think about the Reverend T.J. Jemison showing Dr. King how a bus boycott went. There was a civil rights movement in Opelousas and Shreveport and Lake Charles. And then you come to Lafayette, you have some people, but where was a sustainable civil rights movement? It was almost non-existent because people were called in and said, we don't want that trouble. And that has been the mindset. People push back against change in this city, hoping that something mystical is going to happen with a group of people that have shown time and time again that they are committed to disenfranchising people of color. They're committed to it. And the truth is, they're not the majority. Dr. Williams, in my estimation, they are not the majority. But they are elected because we are too afraid to call them what they are, racists. Period. That's Jamal's opinion. I sat in the mayor's office and called him a racist because I think he is. His practices are racist. What they have done to appoint people to boards and commissions systemically disenfranchise people of color, except for if you go along to get along. It's wrong, and it's a problem. Now I'm going to get off my soapbox. You can be mad and talk about me later if you don't like what I said. I promise worse has been said by better people. All right, I love y'all. Bishop Milton, I want to come to you and say, and ask a question to Chris's point, does the public policy exist in this city for the change? We're talking about our own having the same conversation decade after decade.
So, about 13 years ago, while volunteering with the city planning office, we go and take a trip to Lincoln, Nebraska to see how housing is done, and also to compare the city of Lafayette to the city of Lincoln, Nebraska, because of the demographics were similar. It was a fact-finding mission to see how we can do things different. One thing came up that was so poignant was the policy on housing in Lincoln, Nebraska. In Lincoln, Nebraska, no one has to pass a policy, a law, or a rule to tell the real estate industry how to do something that will work so tremendously well in Lafayette, Louisiana. Over there, they don't use classism to make their policy decisions on housing. In the same subdivision, if a new subdivision is coming up, there will be different price housing. There may be an 800 square foot in the same block that there is a 3,600 square foot house. Of course, the counter in some houses might be granted, and the other one might be the cheaper type of material provided with. But the bottom line is that the philosophy and the thought in Lincoln, that housing development is the same lady who might be the housekeeper should have to come all the way from across town to work in the houses of people who might want to hire for her services. They want to live in a neighborhood where everybody's treated the same. The facade of the houses, it might be a smaller house, the interior might be a lot cheaper material, but it'll look just like it fits into the community. And we don't have what we have here in Lafayette, where here's the rich side of town, here's the poor side of town. Here is a low-income housing, and here is upper-scale housing. They don't do it that way. So what needs to happen as a solution to our problem in Lafayette is that we must call out, one, the schism, the racism, sexism, classism, all those schismisms. We must challenge them. And oftentimes when we say education, we think about educating the poor blacks by the opportunity. No, let's educate the poor, white, selfish, greedy, whatever type Class A citizen about how they're destroying the economy and the life quality of the majority of people in this community. So I'll give one more example and I'll share with you. So as a member of the Pastors Alliance of 29 Black congregations, the chamber came to us one day. The president, the chairman of the board, the then Mr. Brother, also a good friend of mine, and they said to us, we realized something. We realized that we haven't done a good job of developing our DBEs, disadvantaged business enterprises. And because of it, with all these federal projects coming into Lafayette, the I-49 project, the I-10 project, the airport, The DBEs are coming in from Shreveport and New Orleans, and the money that is set aside to the government, federal government mandates, is going out of our community rather than staying in. So they realize that they have a problem. All of a sudden, you have a problem. What about the people who this was set up for? You see? So it requires not just policy shifts, because policy will shift with the mind that runs the institutions. What we need is a different ideology, a different way of thinking, one that is equitable, just, and fair. And how do we do that? Education, but not just to the oppressing, the mind, and dispossessed, but to those who claim and think that they know it all. It must be a public right.
You did. I think you did a wonderful job of doing that. I think, Mr. Martinez, when you're reaching for the microphone, and then I'm coming to you, Councilman Rubin.
I just want to speak a little bit more on some specific tools here in Lafayette that are designed to help North Lafayette, the north side of Lafayette, and African American businesses specifically on the north side. Two of those we've mentioned a little bit tonight, but I want to talk a little bit more about them, and specifically about the Northway Economic Development District. The first, the North Lafayette Redevelopment Authority Commission. It's something Tina mentioned last week that's really coming back online. You know, I'll advise everyone, like Tina said, to write this down, the North Lafayette Redevelopment Authority. Research what that is, what their mission is, and how they're going to help move the needle in North Lafayette. Just know that our representatives, our state rep, Gerald Boudreaux, and our House member, Vincent Pierre, are spearheading that effort to bring that back online. Secondly, the Northway Economic Development District. It was a district that was created when our last mayor president left on the way out. And this district basically is a taxing district. It's a special taxing district that was specifically created to raise money for projects to stimulate economic activity on the north side. This district, it levies 1% sales tax and 2% occupancy tax within a specific geographic area, or a sandbox, as I call it. What this can do, this district, is it can help your business scale. It can help you with training or with understanding how do I get my licensing. It can help you as a business create better lighting and enhance what you have now in the footprint. It can help you as a new business coming into the district and you need some seed money to really start your business. This district is going to have an opportunity to really do some of the things that we haven't been able to do outside of ourselves. This is something, again, that we will somewhat control, meaning those dollars will stay within the district. And so that's going to be a heavy lift, but it's something that we as an organization, meaning the POD group, who's a partner to this Economic Development District, look forward to. What that means now is that strategic plan, getting all those stakeholders to the table, our elected officials, our community organization, our business leaders, our business owners, our community owners, to the table and say, where do we want to take the north side? How do we get us there? And what's the right vehicle to do that? Because these resources are there. The opportunities here like never before. And I think that there's a shift, at least in the national consciousness, of the importance of how and the need to engage African American businesses, African American in general, because quite frankly, the disinvestment has continued for so long that we're not really able as a country or as a community to move forward. And right now we're addressing those.
And On just that piece that he talked about the Lafayette Redevelopment Commission, as being a former commission, the one that was there before, and having 2 terms of discussions with previous legislators. Every other entity that was established in the state of Louisiana, it was established with a fiscal note. The one in Lafayette was not established with a fiscal note. So I would suggest that the solution is not only to establish it, but for the state of Louisiana to have an attached, dedicated fiscal note to the instrument.
And Dr. Williams, just a clarifying question here, speaking specifically about the ability to tax and levy money or raise revenue, right?
Well, the ones that was created before, it established the entity, and there was $500,000 appropriated for operations of the authority. That is key in the success of the entity, because then the entity's staff can go out and grow that. But when you start with 0,
Yes.
you're being set up for failure.
Yes.
And so it's just, since we're talking about solutions, I know this is great work that's going on by elected people, by community representatives, and I know that we're going to have lessons learned from the past, and I'm just suggesting that the fiscal note be attached to it.
I have another follow-up question, and sorry, but this is interesting, and I'm sure if you're watching, then you want to know. And this is for anybody, Ms. Shelton, Bingham, Dr. Williams, Bishop Milton, Ms. Martinez, Dr. Stewart, I guess AD. I'm gonna come back to y'all. Keep telling me I'm gonna come back to them. I'm trying to get it back for that council meeting. Yeah, just like you know. Ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun. All right, now I'm just messing. All right. So, one, why was it established without a fiscal note? So that's question 1 for anybody. And then question 2, after, and I'm going to be very specific here and excuse my specificity, but I call names and ask questions for a purpose. Why after 2 1/4 terms has a state representative that represents that area not added the fiscal note? And after 1 1/4 terms, why hasn't the state senator for that area not added the fiscal note?
It was, I'm going to read this because he's following the current deal. Before, and this may answer a lot of the questions, before it was, my involvement was through Senator Elvin Gilbert. Do I have to say more?
The Republican.
Yes.
Just to answer your question specifically, it's really the dynamics of the politics from the appointing authority that's attached to the actual redevelopment authority. And by design, they put conflicting people on the board that, quite frankly, couldn't work together, really weren't looking at the best interest of the community or the tool that they had at their disposal. So that played a lot into, your questions and specifically why we haven't been able to move the needle in the past. But I think, again, now, our elected officials, at least with my specific involvement in conversations with them, they understand the seriousness of an organization like this. If you look at Baton Rouge as an example of the success and what they're doing, the great work on Plank Road and redeveloping and reimagining Plank Road and what that can look like, and the investments that the community has rallied around that organization, from state dollars to local community dollars to federal dollars, for multimodal transportation projects, community, mixed-use projects and the like. Those things can happen here in Lafayette with commitment from the various stakeholders. And I think now, at least, we're at a point, and others are at a point to where we're trying to really make that happen.
Great to hear. All right, so we'll follow that up with, it's been 9 years and the other person has had 5. Get us that money. Anybody else on the panel want to answer that? Okay.
John.
Bishop Milton.
So I don't want to sit in silence and pretend that I don't have something to say. Because I want to say this here, as long as I've been on this path of trying to fight for equality, equity, and particularly investment in our community, I can look and see who will benefit from the monies that would be put in, and who's in control of them. And I want you to know that I'm not very optimistic, because, and I don't want to lie about it. I want to bring good news, but the bottom line is, you take for example, you're going to stand up the economic authority, but if the money is going for the 40-acre tract that the diocese owns, who already has more money than anybody else in the community, what good is it in terms of uplifting the people? Yes, there might be some commercial investments in there, and it might look, and a few people might get some jobs. But the reality is, you put the millions of dollars, and it's dedicated. It's dedicated for a purpose that somebody else has for their advantage. And it looks like, because of the black community, it's ours.
Yes.
I'm just saying to you, I ain't no fool.
Keep going. Keep going.
All right, well, I don't, anybody wants to respond to it. Certainly, folks, we know politicians were harmed in the making of this video today.
And just to add on that, Bishop, I can tell you that at least from a business perspective, at least from my business, private opportunity developers, our mission has always been specifically designed to address the issues within undeserved communities. We're intent on sticking to our mission. We ourselves have a 40-year agreement with the Northway Economic Development District to really move the needle and look at it from a holistic and a long-term approach. And you're absolutely right. A lot of times, we get funding, we get programs, we get CARES Act funding that come into our community, but somehow find a way to move out our community expeditiously. And so we're aware of those tactics and those things, but I can say, at least from our standpoint, is being at the table and having, some responsibility to deliver to our community that we live and work and play in, that we're counting on our community to hold us accountable, right? And hold others accountable to make sure that we're able to not only use those dollars in an equitable way, but to ensure that there is growth and there's measurable growth for our community.
All right, so this side of the table has been on for a second. I'm coming to the audience for questions in a little bit. Start formulating your questions. Mr. Rubin, you remember what you wanted to say?
You know what you're doing.
Yep.
Ain't no fun. Look at man, you guys are doing. All right, basically, I know it's kind of off, but it's similar to what I wanted to say, still in the same area. The key word that keeps being mentioned around here is education. Everything, and we're talking about solutions, and education is a key thing there. And you mentioned something earlier as well. You talk about the leaders of the community. All right? Yeah, us politicians, we are the leaders. But if you're politician, I don't like to use the word politician, but you're elected officials. Let's do it like that. If you don't see elected officials in your community getting involved, I think I might need to send to the principal's office for this one. But if your elected officials not being involved in the community, you need another elected official. That's my point. And I'm going to tell you why I say that. Because yesterday, this young man invited me to be a guest speaker at their program that they have every Saturday. And I thought I was going in there to teach or educate. And at the end of the day, I wanted to be an educator. Why? Because I was involved in a community that I love. And I didn't go in there saying, I know everything. You know what I'm saying? And they taught me a lot of things about my community. You know what I'm saying? So, once again, education is the greatest solution to every situation. I'm not going to say problem, okay? I'm going to use the term situation. Every situation that we're talking about right now starts with education. Education. You know what I'm saying? If we don't do that, we're lost. You know what I'm saying? So, I just wanted to add that, and there's a lot of times the problem is we have too many. Oh yeah, I know. What do you know? That's the question. What do you know? You know what I'm saying? I go into every situation with an open mind. I'm trying to learn every day. That's why I came here. I could have wiped this off. But I come anyway because I want to get educated. I want to know what my community wants. I want to know. That's why you see me on the grounds. I'll go to functions, and I know I get beat up sometimes. I look to be beat up. I put my arm on, I say, oh snap. Look who's in there, I guess it's about to wear me out. But I put my arm on. And I go in there with an open mind, and I understand the frustrations of my community. I understand that frustration. You know why? Because I've been on the other side. You know, when I was campaigning, I say from the community, for the community. That's because I'm there. I know what's going on. I feel you pain. Okay, you're looking at you like you're trying to tell me what's going on. But that's why I go in this community and try to understand what's going on. So, once again, keyword today. You don't take nothing else from this. Educate yourself on anything that you're having an issue with.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin, and you will get some bonus points for that first part of your answer. I think you were right on target, and you're not going to the principal's office as long as I'm the moderator. I think a well-spoken point when your elected officials forget that they are public servants, right? I didn't like these elected officials. They are public servants, meaning you serve the public, and the public in the area that you live and reside in. And folks shouldn't see you when you're peddling turkeys that you got for free anyway. They shouldn't see you for the Easter egg hunt only because you want to go to election season. They shouldn't see you smiling and grinning at the governor's mansion weekly, but you haven't had a meeting in your district since you got elected. Okay? So I want to say that for the record because we got a whole lot of peacock politicians that show up when they got something to hand out that they got free from somebody else. And I will tell this story because I'm the moderator and capable of doing that. I worked with an elected official, somebody that was running for office, and I heard a business owner refer to a black man as a boy in this community, and they weren't offended. They didn't think that that was offensive or inappropriate. But see, that's the mindset that we have when we elect people that do not have the capability of standing on their own 10 toes. And so, anyway, I digress on that subject. I'll just say, make sure your elected officials are public servants and not peacock politicians. All right, we got about 30 minutes remaining. And I have a question for Ms. Trina Bonnet. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it's Trincella Bonnet, but that's okay. Most people know me as Trini, but I have suggestions and a question. First of all, this Northwest Economic Development District, taxing district, that's just a repeat of history. I think Chris may remember long time ago, over 20 years ago, right there at the corner of Ambassador and Willow, that is considered the Scott area. That was a tax district, like that TAP district thing? TIF. Okay, thank you. That was developed to create jobs for the north side of Lafayette, to help the north side of Lafayette build economically. That didn't do well, because those jobs went to the color of the palm of my hand.
We can't see it. What color is that?
White. You know, it didn't help our community, you know. So what good is it gonna do now? You know, I keep hearing about these district and tip things and stuff. That's just taxing our community, because that money does not stay in our community. It goes elsewhere. And I'm really offended by it, you know, because if I'm gonna pay extra money, all these extra taxes, then I want that money to stay in my community, not go elsewhere. We got Moss Street, you got potholes all over the place. Evangeline Thruway, it's full of potholes. You have to drive in that center lane just not so you don't damage your vehicle. Where is all that money going? I understand that some of it is got a state, they're in charge of it, but still, we need to do something about it. You know, we have crime in our neighborhood. We have a whole bunch of issues. All that needs to be addressed. That's what I have to say about the TIF district. Now, my second issue is, no offense, Mr. Rubin,
Yes, ma'am.
but I mentioned it before. All of these people that are supposed to be in office need to start having meetings with their constituents, the people they're representing, letting them know what's going on in the city, what are these people doing, what laws they're changing, what they're doing to affect our community. And also, they need to ask questions of what we want, what we expect them to do. I know you have issues because, you know, you're only 2 black people there, and with your instance, you're only 1 black person. But we still need to hold them accountable. Have these meetings and find out exactly what the community wants. Now, my next question. It's about...
Let me hold on 1 second. Let me let them get to your questions lest they forget.
Well, I don't need a question on that. I'm just suggesting those. This is the real question that I want to address. This is about taxes. With this, how would I say it? I'm trying to be polite, but this paying the taxes of people's property for so many years and acquiring the taxes, and then you got to pay so much money to get the tax back.
Acquiring the property for
the property, yeah. Acquiring the property for the taxes. And then they have these environmental fees that they be tacking on the people's property. And when you go to pay the taxes, they don't let you pay just the taxes. You got to pay the whole amount. We black people don't have that kind of money.
Oh, it's just systemic racism.
You know, that is something that needs to change. You know, I spoke about that many times. You know, it never really affected me, but this time it did. Because when I went to pay the taxes for the past year, I was told that there was 2 environmental fees on there. I had no idea about it. You know, I couldn't pay the taxes. Now, they removed one of them, but I don't feel I'm responsible for any of them because I wasn't informed about it. The information about the taxes was sent to a dead aunt of mine in Chicago instead of being sent to me, and they had all my information. You know, they doing this undermining systemic racism in the communities and taking the properties.
Right.
How do we change that law? At least they could let them pay the taxes or work out some kind of way to pay the environmental fees, because a lot of the properties in the neighborhood, they got for the taxes and also these environmental fees. How do we go about changing that law? So they're not taking our properties anymore. How do we inform them? I'm sorry.
One minute. First of all, you must know that when this issue came up about what to do about administrative property, way back, Dr. Williams was still on council.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly, when they tried to create a land bank and just simply take it from you, they understood it was unconstitutional, so they had to put all kinds of procedures together. The thing is that big. Mm-hmm. All the strategies are in place to do what you hoping won't happen. And our people are with our heads in the ground like we're ostriches, don't realize that there is a serious threat In 1910, black people in America owned 15 million acres of land in America. Now we own less than 5 million.
That's right.
And the trend continues.
And so there's another call we're going to be on tonight to talk about legislation that's going to be proposed on the state level to help streamline what's happening with adjudicated properties and what's happening with heirs' rights properties. That it was, believe it or not, the protections for those two things was done in the last farm bill last year that was signed by Donald Trump. So our 11 states have already passed these laws. The question is whether we're going to be able to get anybody in the legislative black caucus to carry that water. Locally, Sancho hopefully will have this summer some discussions with the community in terms of property right issues. And we have some people that we plan on bringing in hopefully in June or July. And then lastly, Mr. Rubin, I don't know if it was the parish council or the city council that passed Mr. Travis Broussard as some type of adjudicator of nuisances. That is what I'm understanding, part of the realm of what was done by the DA's office is now going to be done by his office. And the community needs to get a better understanding of what falls under Mr. Travis Broussard's jurisdiction that was created as a quote-unquote judge, which I understand that's typically been known as a hearing officer. That was passed. I don't know, some people at the table may be more familiar with it than I, but I know there's chatter about where is that going.
For the record, that was an appointment. City officers should have nothing.
That was an appointment by Josh Gilliam.
So we didn't have anything to do with that. And to address the meetings with the constituents, right quick, 1 minute. The COVID-19 has stifled us a lot. But what I've done was try to have meetings with my unincorporated area. I just had one to let the constituents in the unincorporated area know what's going on. I have access to the rec centers. So we went to the rec center and we had us a meeting. I let them know what's going on. For myself, I'm speaking for myself, and please don't be apologetic about holding us accountable, okay? I know for myself, I plan on doing more meetings within my community as things are lifting up and things are going on. We can utilize the rec center, as I said before, we can spread out and have social distance out and still keep people informed. So, hold us accountable and don't be apologetic about it. That's my opinion.
So, Mr. Rubin, I just wanted to respond in 30 seconds to what you said. So I find it even more problematic that Josh Guillory appointed Travis Broussard to be this judge and hearing officer, and the areas that it's going to affect the most is your district, Glenn Lazar's district, and Pat Lewis's district, and you guys are not engaged and not involved in that. And what I would contend is that, what Ms. P said, was that communication needs to take place. What she's asking for, and I think we all would agree, is that communication needs to take place to the community. Although you wasn't a part of it, you control the budget. So how you get paid, you're going to be discussing in August. Whether or not it happens or not depends on whether or not you guys fund it. And so I concur with her statements. I think it's imperative for the three of you to engage the community on what's going to be happening, particularly in this area, because it is going to affect your district tremendously.
And is it something that's needed?
All right, thank you so much. We have a question, and folks, we have about 10 minutes left, and I got about 5 questions. So let me put on my moderator head, and we're gonna start moving real fast. If you get cut off, don't let your feelings be hurt. Okay. Mr. Smith. Yes, sir.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Smith. I drove down from Lake Charles. I'm part of the Parish Council of Caxton Parish, and I want to commend y'all for having this event tonight. But, like I say, we in Lake Charles, and we kind of envy y'all because we trying to get where y'all at. And right now, y'all, I know you have a lot of issues, but there are people worse off than y'all. So, like I say, we in Lake Charles, we had actual hurricanes, two of them back to back, ice storm, dealing with COVID-19. And, I know it's definitely hard, and I'm here to learn more, to be more educated. So that's why I drove down to try to learn more from the Lafayette area. And like Ms. T spoke, myself, I haven't had many meetings because of the COVID-19, but listening to her talk about it, I'm going to have one in about three weeks. So I'm going to get mine together. So I want to thank y'all again, for having this going on. So, but I'll have my meeting in 3 weeks in Lake Charles.
Well, thank you, Mr. Smith, for joining us.
Yes.
Everything that you did is gold. All right. Brother Takuna, with a question and comment.
Time is short, so I can't really express all what I needed to express, but I do want to just leave a couple of nuggets that hopefully they'll catch on. First of all, I speak in the spirit of Prejean. Those of you who don't know, that means self-determination. Anything we do, we should be self-determined. Okay, I speak also in the manner in which you must understand in all the issues that you discuss. The first and essential thing that needs to be done is that to build a community, you must commit to building the people of that community into the knowledge of themselves. That effort will help you strategize, will set your strategy, will incentivize your people to use whatever resources they have, to work together, have a sense of pride. All the things that you spoke of that's on the negative side that is not happening in our community is because that effort has not been committed to. Now, in terms of action, and again, I don't have enough time to go into detail, but in terms of action, if organizations like this and our public representatives will deal with the issues, 3 issues: taxation without representation to the black community, culture genocide, and reparations based on the damage that was done to the black community based on this reckless promotion of Cajun, Acadiana, and Creole. You get reparations. You concentrate on taxation without representation. You will find out that much of the millions of dollars that was tagged for black communities and black people and poor people has gone to this effort. You got 75 parishes that are getting federal and state dollars in the name of poor people and black people, for cultural development, for economic development, where the Cajuns themselves are the minority in those communities. Much of the millions of dollars that was already tagged for us is being stolen right from under our nose. Now, when you're going to be as a public official, sit in a meeting, and you got millions of dollars coming in across the table in the name of Cajun, Acadiana, to develop Cajun, Acadiana, you don't say nothing, you have nothing to tell black folks about economic development. Nothing. Those monies are coming in. When you allow culture genocide to exist among yourselves and your people, you have nothing to tell black communities in terms of the damage and the ill effects of cultural genocide in our community. I'm saying to you, reparations is a real issue not only globally for black people, but reparations for this community is certainly valid. We should ask reparations for the damage that has been done, is being done to black folk. Talk to your little black girls and boys. They don't want to be black. They think they live in Acadiana, they want to be Cajun, and they think they're going to Creole heaven. That's self-hatred. You can't build on that.
Thank you for that, Brother Takuna. Mr. Prejean.
I want to thank Brother Takuna for giving me the clarity. He answered my question in more ways than one, with clarity. I heard the panel up there. We got a lot of good, bright people up there. But what I heard is look like we still need permission to do what we need to do for ourselves. I mean, where are our people? I heard a doctor say we need a pool of money. Okay, so when are we going to have another meeting so we can get specifics on what it is Doc is talking you know, where we gonna get our talking points in there and our bite-sized pieces of information on what's our objective, what's our course of action, how we gonna get there, who, what, when, and how, and not worry about what these people are doing to us. They take our taxpayers' money, they give it to UL and put a sculpture up there, a metal sculpture, fleur-de-lis that they burnt, that they used to brand our people with, and we can't get a report on how much money it costs. Our tax monies went to do that. They put that on our athletes' uniforms, and they'll run and make jump and make mega dollars for that university, but they don't have to answer to us about anything. Can we get a report from the administration about how much of our taxpayer money goes to a university, which is not a private university, is it?
No.
It is public. Our money go there, right? You know, we need our officials to get specifics why we keep getting this stuff happen to us. And on the other side is, I want to know when our next follow-up meeting can be. Do we have a list where we can put down our email address or whatever and keep coming together and talk about what we can do for self? Because I don't mind getting with 100 people that say, I want to put X number of dollars out right now to get this going, okay? Why we ain't talking about reparations like Dr. Kona said, they got a whole bank that's sitting there doing nothing. Why don't they give that to the black community and see how many people can open that song gun and fund ourselves? And then give the people that need the money in our community, let them come to that bank and get it. And we'll deal with the interest rate and the whole 9 yards. We need to get specific on how we can do for self. Who's the Chocolate, Ojima and all this stuff, yeah, we need to get specific. And I'm glad I came because I saw this on TV and the audio wasn't real good, so I had a chance to come in and hear it firsthand. And I hope this is not the last meeting we have. But just keep going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Bluchens. What I'll tell you is between Dr. Williams, Ms. Broussard, Bishop Milton, and then I'm talking about people that have helped to plan this, we will certainly have another meeting. We will schedule it and we will make sure it is publicized so that everybody knows. Bishop, can we use the church?
Anytime.
There you go, we're gonna have a regular meeting. And maybe next time our other elected officials will show up, folks. All right. I think I got one more question for Mrs. Green. Ms. Green, how are you today?
I'm fine, you?
Yes, ma'am.
As a constituent, I look back over the years from the Wilbur Pierre to the Don Cravens, and I look at the representatives of today, and I see no changes. I say this, when I look at the representatives, when they come in our community, they're not speaking for us on our behalf. I'm looking beyond what I'm seeing, and I'm going to give an example. With the opioid crisis, they made that a medical crisis in 2017, and they have these forums that they've been having, and you see Reggie Thomas, Vince Pierre, they're the forefront on the opioid crisis, but over the years from the Wilfred to the Don Cravens, I have yet to see a black politician to ever come on the forefront and speak about the crack cocaine in our community. So when the black politicians come in our community, white people send you there because white people don't have to say, hey, we're not gonna make this about white people. They just do it and take care of themselves, and we put a black person in the forefront to take care of them, and they not taking care of us. That's what I see with the politicians or the, whatever they call it, the public service, that's what's going on in our community. So y'all come in the community, y'all bring y'all turkeys. Y'all come into the community with stuff that most of the people don't need because the turkey costs 25 cents a pound. You know, so y'all not coming with real issues. And when we come with a real issue, y'all want to backdoor us because everybody in Louisiana think we know each other. We may be familiar with everybody, but we're not friends. It's a different position you take on. When you take on a position and someone addresses you on your platform because you felt the need to say what you wanted to say, and then you want to come backdoor to people. That needs to stop. And then have the nerve sometimes, because I do much. I've addressed many officials in the background with a letter from the chief of police, from the marshal, from the consul. They don't respond, but I know it's a principal issue that I sent to them, and just the fact that I know I sent it to them, you're accountable for what you know. Even though I don't bring it to the forefront because I won't do that to you, because the white people expect that, us to come after each other. That needs to stop. So they don't have to worry about us, because like what we gonna do when they see we bickering with each other? Carlos Harvin, leave him alone. He's a puppet. He's doing what he's told to do. So why are we gonna be upset with him? Go after Josh, go after somebody else. So that's why I'm disgusted with
Thank you, Ms. Green.
Could I have just one follow-up?
30 seconds.
Just 30 seconds, yeah. Everything I heard indicates that you have no political capital. You're not respected on these different boards and organizations. How do you expect to get that political capital, just acknowledging the fact that you are 2 or 5 on the board, 3 or 4 or 7 on the board? You didn't figure that out before you ran for office? That means the numbers are against you. That means there's got to be some creativity to produce the political capital to sway whatever your desires are that you see that's in the best interest of the black community. 30 seconds, 29 seconds.
Thank you, I'm going to respond, Ms. Green, just one of those moderator superpowers, because I think it's important here. We elect elected officials to represent us. And I think some of the hesitancy that I've heard being at the forefront of protests, being at the council meetings, I see you regularly, and thank you for being there, because I hear a lot of stuff from a lot of people, but they don't have their feet on the ground, and they're not. I see Brother Chakuna all the time. Sister Broussard sits next to me so we can make sure we keep each other up in case one of us needs to go to the bathroom, right? But there's an accountability question that needs to happen in our community, period. I'm tired of having to beg somebody to do the job that I elected them to do. I shouldn't have to beg you to come to a forum in your community if you're the elected representative of this area. Period. And I'm not going to make any excuses for that. And so I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. We can't beat up on each other. But there are some things we can do. We can, as a council, defund positions that are meant to ostracize us. Carlos Harvin is right in public. Then the council needs to remove his salary from the budget. They are the legislative arm of government. And as I understand it, most people realize what he is. Defund the position. Utilize the skill set, to Brother Takuna's point, that you have as an elected official. Be creative. Defund the projects that the mayor has that are not in the best interest of the community. And so we do have some opportunity before us. But what I will never do is let somebody that looks like me, but act like somebody else, claim that they are speaking on the behalf of the people in this community, because we got far too many of them that for 2 or 3 terms have done absolutely nothing. Go to the governor's mansion every time there's an event, but don't look for them when it's time for one of these conversations. So here's an invitation. One of those other moderator superpowers, I'm gonna look at the camera and I say this. Vincent, Pierre, you're invited. You can bring any of your relatives with you. Gerald, you're invited. Pat, you're invited. Glenn, you're invited. Reggie, you're invited. Josh can come. You can bring Nanette.
Glover.
Mr. Chief Glover, you can come. Because it is important, when I see events on the other side of town, they're there. My question is, why can't you come here? Or return the call? But if he's here, thank you. I'm going to give you a gold star for that one. Ms. Green.
The black pastors can come.
Say it again?
The black pastors can come.
The black pastors can come, but
they should get black first.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say this to you. Every time there's been a protest or activism work in this community, they don't invite the activists, they don't invite DeMonte Broussard, they don't invite Chris Williams, I haven't seen Ravis there, but they sure invite the Pastors Alliance because it gives them cover. What I'm not doing is standing shoulder to shoulder with somebody that's consorting with the enemy. And I don't mean that in a way that I'm at war with people, but what I will say is, insofar as me and my house are concerned, I went to the north side. I grew up in country acres in Royale. I'm going to speak for, represent, come to council meetings, and say my piece about my people. We can't continue to allow these people to claim to be representing us. Whenever chance they get, they never show up. Now, we have 4 minutes left. Y'all get some 30-second closings, but we will do this again. I've got each of you all as panelists. I know y'all expecting something different. I see Dr. Stewart sweating back there. Oh, what y'all got there? He getting called to teach your softball tomorrow.
Jamal,
yes, sir.
10 seconds need to be given to the recognition that we're in a black institution that is black controlled, demonic temple, and if you're here and you don't have to get permission to come here other than to talk with the pastor who's involved, that kind of institutional participation needs to exist multiple times in our community, and it's not going to happen unless we produce institutions like that with leaders that think like that.
I agree 100%. Bishop Milton, thank you for always giving us the courtesy of using this space. I think I want to have a block party next week. I just,
We're on the center of this.
But I want to give you 30 seconds to close, folks, and I want to say that I'm humbled to have moderated this panel, and I'm sure if you don't want to be on a panel that I'm moderating anymore, I understand. It's tough out here. Right, Amy? All right.
So 30 seconds. The idea of solutions to issues that were spoken to on last Sunday regarding housing in Lafayette and regarding economic development. Again, I remind you that we live in the city that in 1966, Southern consumers brought forth the idea of Kudisha self-determination. They exercised umoja and they pulled themselves together. And in 1978, Father A.J. McKnight wrote an article in this book called Portrait in Black. Father A.J. McKnight put down his response to the question after Dr. King's shooting in 1968. 10 years later, they were observing it in 1978 in a Black Catholic Symposium. And he wrote an article that introduced the Ngutu Saba as a means for Black people to come up out of the relics of segregation, Jim Crow, slavery, and all that kind of thing. And I suggest to you that education, that the response of the answer being education. Brother Spoon is right. The information is there. We have a great example of Southern consumers as an economic uplift for our community, controlled violence.
So if you own property, do not sell your property. Do not lose your property because of taxes. Do not lose your property for environmental liens. Call us at Sun Housing, Sun Churro, so that you can find out what your rights are and what ways we may be able to direct you to the right decision to save your property. We can be reached at sunchurro, sunchdo.com, sunchdo.com, or at 337-501-7617. Do not sell your property. Do not lose your property to taxes or foreclosure. Come to us to talk about it before it's too late. And we will have a session this summer that will talk about renters' rights and what your rights are as a person who is in a dwelling and what your legal rights are. Thank you so much.
First, I want to thank Black Lafayette for actually putting on this event and last week's event focusing on economic development, economics, and housing on the north side. I think it's very important that we continue these conversations and we continue to engage all these different stakeholders. Councilman Mike Smith from Lake Charles, thank you for coming and being a part of this discussion. We understand, you know, everything that your community has went through and has been going through. I know I can speak for these folks up here that we stand with you and your community in Lake Charles, and any support that we can provide now or in the future, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Okay.
Because that's what we're here for. Quickly, we have an opportunity to fill a gap here in our community that we've seen being here for a very long time. So now is our time. So when we talk about solutions, here's some solutions that I'm asking that our viewers keep in mind. Number one, make a commitment to join a community organization. Make a commitment to join an organization that, you know, one, you have an interest in, and two, is providing some support within the community. There's a variety of them out there, so please, just really join a community organization and get involved. Secondly, buy local. Support minority businesses. You know, as a serial entrepreneur and somebody that's had various businesses in the community, I can tell you that support from your community is essential for not only growth and expansion and scaling up, but really for us to continue to keep a community united and have that fabric. Thirdly, attend these meetings. Attend city, parish council meetings. Attend other planning meetings. Get involved. I can speak for private opportunity developers and our development goals going forward that we'll be hosting some meetings specifically speaking to strategic planning and how do we move the north side forward. And so it's going to be important that we have everybody at the table. Next is one that, you know, I heard a past councilman speak about is play the position. You know, everybody can't be the quarterback. Everybody cannot be the quarterback. We all have a specific skill set. We all have specific skills. Play your role and know that you're part of the team. Know that, you know, by working together cohesively that we can really move the needle. And I find that that's always an issue. And lastly, you know, I just want to, okay. And lastly, I just wanted to give out my contact information. And ask you to reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns in regards to development on the north side. My email address is rkmartinez, that's rkmartinez @ the Group, that's TEPODGRP.com. The Pod Group, THEPODGRP.com. And my number is 337-366-3372. And again, be engaged, stay involved, and appreciate the opportunity.
None of the alphas on the panel passed the 30-second rule. Just want to say that for the record. My frat brothers and I'll have to talk after this.
I also want to say, as not being an alpha, that is not equitable at all that they have to speak to. But
EEOC complaint with the lady in the purple.
I'll be brief and say ditto to everything that Ray just said about making sure that we're active, we're present, everything that you want to table ways or action steps that you all can take right now, today, to start getting engaged and active in what's happening around housing and economic development in our community. I want to encourage you, and I want to take the time, actually this time, to invite you guys to a couple of conversations. There's going to be a federal conversation, I think it's happening this week on the 17th, discussing the new deal on housing. And this is a playbook that was drafted as what does the Biden administration need to do in the first 100 days to advance our housing administration and advance our housing policies for our communities. And that's a general federal conversation, but it's always good to listen and be educated and gain knowledge, because knowledge is power within our community. And then I also want to invite you guys, March 26th, we're going to be, I'm sorry, it might be wrong, don't quote me, but definitely check the Comey's page. The week of the 22nd, we're going to be hosting the Acadiana listening tour around housing again. And this time we're going to be focused specifically on hearing what residents need and listening to your lived experience about what you're experiencing around housing here in the Lafayette and Acadiana area. Or, I'm sorry, Mrs. Acuna.
I'm about to ask you where was the KDM?
The area surrounding Lafayette Parish. I want to encourage you guys to get plugged into that conversation as well. And if you guys are interested, that information is always going to be shared on the Commonality page, or you can check it out on the Lafayette Habitat for Humanity's page. And if you want to get involved on the local side, the Commonality has conversations monthly on the second week of every month, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, around housing, economic development, and community in action. And it's just regular folks having a conversation about how we can start moving things forward. So I'm excited, wrapping it up. I'm excited about the solutions and the people that want to work towards the solutions. I'm trying to eat. I don't know what Margin said. So, but I'm excited to work forward towards the solutions, and that this conversation is going to be scheduled, because we do have a lot of conversation, and a lot of the conversations that we had tonight and over the last couple of weeks are conversations that have been happening for decades, over and over again. And now it's time for us to really, these group of people at the table, these people who are now activated now, you know, how do we continue to advance the community? I don't care about your watch. How we continue to advance the community and move things forward together. And so I'm very excited to get to the solution. So when you schedule it, Jamal, call me.
Dr. Stewart, let's see if you can beat the longest time.
So I want to thank Black Lafayette for hosting this.
Put it back.
I want to thank Black Lafayette for hosting this event and for having such an honest and forthright conversation. And I think it's something that we need collectively as a community. So as I mentioned, we are working on a project right now, this program right now, and we do intend to do that in the future. And we're going to do it again in the fall, do it again in the spring with our partners in Black Chamber. But I also want to welcome any feedback in terms of how we're doing it, because we want to make sure that this program maximizes its value for the community. So with that said, I'm going to wrap it up, and thank you all very much.
Hey, I have an uncle that's around, so that mean I get extra time?
You get 20 seconds.
I'm working on it though. And it's funny.
Like the council meeting. We do a little
So look, the first thing I want to say is, hold your leaders accountable. Hold us accountable. Plain and simple, you know what I'm saying? Just because I look like you, that don't mean I speak for you if you're from, let's say, Cameco or Scott, okay? Hold your leader that's in charge of you in that area, hold them accountable. Don't hold me accountable just because we look alike. Yeah, I can help speak for you, but go to the people that represent you. Let them know that, hey, look, even though we don't look alike, these are our needs. These are our wants. Okay? And last, education. That's the number one word that has been said today. Educate yourself. Don't start talking about a subject because you went on Facebook and you saw somebody say, oh, the sky is pink. Then all of a sudden you spread a rumor the sky is pink. Educate yourself, guys. Educate yourself. Hold your leaders accountable. And let's make this world a better place, because the number one gift that was given to all of us is LOVE. Love all of your neighbors, and we'll make this place a much better place. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you to the panelists again. I want to thank each of them for taking more than 30 seconds. Very, very powerful for all of you all. So I'm going to take a little bit of time to explain that the title of the program is Black Lafayette, but it seems to have transformed into a set of groups that have put on an event. I want to thank Chris with Black Folks Talking, Marshall with the NAACP District D, Stand Black, and all of the other organizations that partner with us to put this event on and make it a success. Next time you come, bring a friend. If you see an elected official, ask them why they weren't here. I'm sure they have a reason. Good night and God bless you.